This time we're going to do auto direction reversal with 2 different speeds using micro switches and a couple of speed controllers. So I thought I'd show some of the steps of me putting this thing together. It's just a mock-up. First thing, I had to find a belt and some gears and a motor. These gears came with really short belts, so I just bought a bulk piece of belt. And I watched a couple of videos on how to splice it together. So that's what I'm doing here, is trying to figure out how to splice a piece together. So I took a small piece and overlapped the piece and put a third piece in between the ribs to get my alignment, and then I taped it together. And then here I cut it at an angle. Probably should have cut it at a little bit more of an angle, but it ended up working. It held together pretty well. So what I did was put it on a piece of tape so I could hold it in place. So they look like they were aligned pretty well. Then I just kind of opened it up and put some super glue in there. And then I thought I would just fold the tape over to hold it while it dried. And I just used a bolt and some washers. 10mm hole in that gear, so I got a 10mm bolt. And then here I'm gonna try to mark a spot to put a pin. I don't want it too tight, I just want that to spin really freely. Then I'm just filing a little flat spot to make it a little bit easier to drill a hole in that bolt for the pin. I'm using a pretty small drill bit to get it started. Then I went up to the size, I think it was a 3/32 for that. I had to make sure the hole was straight. The first try it was a little crooked. I straightened it out some. I'm going to cut off the tape here off of the belt. See how this belt held up. I actually left a piece of tape on the back side. You can see it right there. And I'm just using some wood to mount that bolt. I use some pocket holes to mount everything. I just drove that in with a hammer. Just use some wire ties with the hole in it to mount that motor. I'm just trying to figure out the distance so I can get that belt fairly tight. Giving a little test run here, see if the alignment's okay and the belt's tight enough. And here's how I mounted the micro switches. Okay, let's see if we can put this together. I've got the motor leads here down on 30s, one from each one. This is going to be our speed control, the blue wires, and I put those in the middle here, which should be 87A. Then over here off the speed control, we need to put negative. So I'm going to snap these in right here. And then these need positive power to operate, so we'll put those here. Okay, so that's going to be a positive. This is the negative. This is our output from the speed controllers. Okay, so now we need some positives here on 87. Here. So when this relay changes state, it'll put positive to this wire. This one will stay the same and it'll go from the speed controller negative here. And then when this one changes state, that'll put positive to the black wire. This one will stay negative and it goes through this speed controller. Okay, then I'm going to put a little jumper here. Okay, we're going to put a negative on one side of the coil. Jumper it over to there and then to the negative of here. So that feeds the negative of the coils. The positive side of the coil is the one that's going to make these relays change state, are going to come from this other relay. Okay, so what we have to do here is we've got a common and a normally open and a normally closed on this relay here. So we're going to feed a positive. The common right here. Now if you see some of my previous videos, I have this relay triggering another relay, And a guy with a really good channel, I'll put a link down to his channel, messaged me and said, you know, you don't need that other relay. And I was like, oh yeah, he's right, you don't. I can use this one to trigger these two here. So off one side of that relay we go to one coil, and then off the other side of this relay we'll go to the other coil. Okay, we'll go to there. Okay, so the middle one here, off of this is ground. So we just got to connect it to the ground there. The other one needs positive. I'm just going to put that on this side here. So this is just a mock-up, so it's not, I'm not trying to really do anything, just kind of proof of concept with a bunch of different circuits. So what we're going to do here is, this is the trigger off of this. So every time this gets a signal, it's going to change the state of this relay, and we're going to change the signal with these switches here. Okay, so that's going to go through the normally open side of these switches. Okay, and this is going to go to ground. We're going to use ground for the trigger signal. Okay, and I couldn't find anything really good to connect to the belt here, so I just took a magnet with a screw. I got this one a little bit too high, but anyways, every time this moves, this triggers, it's going to send a negative signal to this relay. So negative, then it goes this way, negative here. So it's going to put positive here and then positive here. Every time that gets triggered, it'll go back and forth. So you can see here I've got negative coming off of here, going to the common and going to the common. Then my trigger is coming out of the normally open, piggybacking right here on the normally open, going to the trigger. I got a little switch here. You can use whatever you want. I just got a switch here so we can turn it on and off. And so I'm going to put a ground so that light will light up. The next thing I'm going to do here is piggyback this terminal with this one over here. And then we're going to put this here, and that'll go to our power source here. I'm just using a battery I had made up years ago, and it's going to go into here. Okay, the middle post I'm going to put to the positive side of the battery. The other side of the switch, we're going to feed these here. Okay, then when we turn on, we got to make sure these are on. Turn that on there. Triggers that micro switch, triggers that one. To make it go faster, so I'm going to go 2 different speeds. You have control of that. go over the wiring diagram. This is the negative circuit. It's our power supply, which in my case is a battery, 12-volt battery. So we come off of here, we go all the way to this connector here. And from this connector, we're gonna go over back to this one. So I've got two spots where I've got negative power branching out to everything. So from here, this is going to the switch. That's to power the light in the switch when you turn it on. And then these here are going to power the speed controllers. So that's the negative going through the speed controllers. Then out of the speed controllers, it goes to the center post here on the relays, which should be 87A. Then off of this one here, we're going to go feed the coil and jump over to the other coil on the relays. This one here is going over to the other relay that has the trigger on it. And then from here, we're going to go to the common of those switches. That jumps over to the common there. So anytime the switches are activated, it'll put a negative to the normally open side, which these can just be parallel, and they go to the trigger. So anytime one of these get activated, we just want to send a signal to the trigger of this relay here. Then for the positive side, we come out of our power supply. On this switch here, it goes to the center post. Then out of the switch, when you activate the switch, we're gonna activate this. So nothing gets a positive going to it until this switch is turned on. Okay, and then we'll go from here to the speed controls. Speed control. From here, we go to this relay here, which is gonna go to 87. The next one goes to the other 87. So when these relays are triggered, it's gonna put power to 30. So these will never be triggered at the same time, just one at a time. So there was two different connectors I'm using here, so I just jumped over to this one. So now these have power. So this goes to the V terminal, giving power to this relay. So this portion of the relay can work. And then the other one's going to the common here. So every time this gets triggered, it'll go back and forth. So if we trigger it, these will be connected. We trigger it again, these will be connected. So when this side's connected, it's going to trigger this coil on this relay, activating this relay, powering it to 30, which will then put positive to this side. When we trigger this again, it's going to excite this side of the coil and close this, putting positive to the green side. So this isn't really a wiring diagram. This is going to be more of how this is operating. So I'm just going to show you the path that these things are taking. So it goes from the negative to here. This is going to go over to here and feed one of the speed controllers. That speed controller goes to here. This one will have that power going to there. This is the one that gets triggered and actually moves the switch inside here. That happens when this, so we're in this case, we're going to say this one gets triggered. So it comes out of here, negative, goes through the common. When it gets triggered and it's closed, then this comes out of here and goes to the trigger side of this relay, closing these two. So that would put power to this coil, which we've got positive coming out of the switch, going over to 87. This one's now energized, so we're putting power to 30, and we get positive on this side of the motor. Right, the speed control is going to supply the negative side, goes to the other side of the motor. So kind of the same thing here. That's all the same. The only thing that's going to change here, our negative goes through here, and then we're going to trigger this switch, which triggers this, and now it's going to trigger this side of the relay, which is going to energize this relay, this coil here. That power all comes through here just like the other one, here to 30, putting positive on the other side of the motor. This speed controller here feeds the negative through there, and that's going to be negative on that side of the motor. Next, I'll leave the wiring diagrams up. Well, thanks for watching. That was a fun little project. Hope you got something out of it, and we'll see you next time.